I should have known things were off that first night I met her. I was at work, handling one of those long days at OC Pine Furniture where I was a sales manager. It was one of the largest furniture stores in the city, and I'd been there for about 10 years by then, so I was used to seeing different kinds of customers. The ones who knew exactly what they wanted, the ones who couldn't make up their minds, and of course, the ones who came in just to browse. But Elena, she was different. When she walked into the store, she had this aura, dressed sharp, every detail in place, walking around like she owned the place. She wasn't there to browse. She knew exactly what she wanted. I could tell right away she was confident, ambitious, and clearly doing well for herself. Turned out she was a real estate broker, one of the best in the city actually, with a long list of clients and a reputation that seemed to impress everyone but herself. I admired that about her. She had this drive, this energy, like she always knew the next step. When we started talking about furniture, it was like she was analyzing every piece, thinking about its impact, its style. She wasn't just looking for a couch or a dining table. She was planning something big, a whole transformation. That first conversation didn't take long to go from furniture to us just talking about life. We laughed about work stuff, and before I knew it, we were exchanging numbers. A week later, we went out for coffee, and from there, things escalated pretty quickly. We'd been dating for about a year when I decided to propose. I figured, why wait? She was beautiful, smart, ambitious, qualities I thought I wanted in a partner. She had a way of lighting up a room, and I was honestly just happy to be along for the ride. After we got married, everything felt like it was finally falling into place. Those first 5 years together were solid. We both worked hard, so we didn't get to spend every evening together, but we found time for each other. We'd save up, take trips, make big plans. I can't deny she had her materialistic side. She liked her designer clothes, nice dinners, fancy trips. And sure, sometimes I thought she was a bit too focused on appearances, but I never minded. She worked hard for her lifestyle, and I respected that. Plus, I figured we balanced each other out. She had the ambition and social energy, while I was more laid back, more focused on stability. I kept thinking I'd gotten lucky with her. I mean, here was this woman, someone everyone else seemed to admire or even envy, and she'd chosen me. There were moments when she'd introduced me to her friends from work, and I could feel that tension, like maybe I didn't quite fit into her world. But it wasn't anything big, just those occasional looks from her colleagues, those side comments about where we lived or what I did for work. Still, I ignored it because I thought we were happy. Looking back, though, I think some of those signs were there early on. She was always driven, always looking ahead, and that ambition, it was almost like nothing was ever good enough. The bigger her successes were at work, the more she'd want to push forward. And honestly, I admired that until later when I started to realize it came with a price. Things really started to fall apart when I lost my job. It was about a year ago. I'd been at OC Pine Furniture for a decade, practically running the place from the ground up, but the market shifted and sales were down across the board. One day, they just called us into a meeting, a big, uncomfortable group of us, and started talking about restructuring and cutbacks. Then just like that, I was out. I wasn't alone. Half the team was let go that day. But none of that mattered to Elena. To her, I was the one who had failed. At first, she didn't say much. She put on this supportive face, asking me about my plans and making polite suggestions. But it didn't take long for her attitude to change. She'd leave these job listings out on the table, some of them circled in red like I wasn't getting the hint. I'd catch her leaving open tabs on my computer with job boards, relocation offers, anything that implied I should start over somewhere else. At dinner, she dropped comments about her friends' husbands, the ones who were apparently doing so well climbing the corporate ladder or running their own businesses. The worst part was I was already trying. I sent out my resume everywhere I could think of, reaching out to contacts, looking for openings, but the whole industry was struggling, not just our store. And Elena just couldn't understand it. Every time I explained, she'd look at me like I was making excuses. One night, she sighed and said, "I never thought I'd be the only one bringing in a paycheck. My friends don't have to deal with this." Hearing her talk like that hurt. Here I was, trying to keep us afloat while navigating this massive change. And all she saw was a drop in income and status. I started feeling like a stranger in my own house, like she'd rather have me be anyone but me. The pressure kept building, especially when I finally landed a job after months of searching. It was at a smaller furniture store, Hesty Furniture, as a salesperson. The pay was a fraction of what I was used to, but it was work, and I wanted to contribute to our household. I was actually relieved to have something solid again, something to put me back on my feet. But when I told Elena, she looked at me with actual disgust. "You're going to work as a salesman?" she said, like I just told her I was going to start collecting trash for a living. "How does it look for me to be a top broker and my husband is a salesperson? This isn't what I signed up for." That's what she said, word for word. I remember it so clearly because it felt like a punch to the chest. After that, things went downhill fast. She started staying out later, claiming she had networking events or dinners with clients, and I'd sit there wondering when she'd even want to spend time with me again. She'd cancel plans last minute or pick fights over the smallest things. It was like she resented me just for existing. At one point, she even suggested I seek help to deal with my issues. My issues. I couldn't believe it. Losing my job, trying to make ends meet, doing everything I could to make things right, these were issues in her eyes. I knew then that whatever we had, the foundation we built our marriage on, was crumbling. I was starting to see her for who she really was, and it wasn't pretty. My 35th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, right? Well, it turned out to be the most humiliating night of my life. Elena had planned the whole thing, and I have to admit, she went all out. She said I deserved it, said I'd had a rough year and that we should celebrate. She booked a caterer, decorated the house with these expensive arrangements, even rented fancy dinnerware. She invited all our friends, family, and even some of my old colleagues from OC Pine. For a second, I thought maybe she was trying to make things right, like she felt bad about how she'd been treating me and wanted to make up for it. But there was something odd about her that night. She was constantly on her phone, disappearing into the other room to take calls, checking her reflection like every strand of hair had to be perfect. She was dressed to the nines with a new dress and expensive jewelry, looking like she was headed for a gala, not my birthday party. I should have known something was up, but I brushed it off, trying to just enjoy myself. About an hour into the party, the doorbell rings. Elena practically jumps up and rushes over, like she's been waiting for this exact moment. When she comes back, she's not alone. There's this young guy with her, maybe late 20s or early 30s. He looked like he just walked off a magazine cover. Expensive suit, slick back hair, and this smug, self-satisfied grin. She brings him right into the center of the room, and I remember this weird, cold feeling coming over me. Then she taps her glass, the room quiets down, and I swear my stomach was in knots. Elena takes this guy's hand, raises her glass, and says, "Everyone, I want you to meet Marcos, my new husband." I just froze. It was like time stopped. I looked around thinking this had to be some horrible joke, but no one was laughing. Everyone was staring at me, at her, and back again, like they couldn't believe what they were hearing either. My parents were in the corner, my mom's hand over her mouth and my dad's face turning red. I don't think anyone breathed in those few seconds. Then she kept going. She looked at me, right at me, and started this twisted speech about how she had outgrown me. She said she needed a real partner, someone who could give her the lifestyle she deserved, and that I'd just been holding her back. Right there in front of everyone, she laid into me, calling me a failure, like saying how embarrassing it was to have a husband who was just a salesman. She went on about how Marcos was everything I wasn't: successful, ambitious, wealthy. She said she was finally with someone who matched her drive and her vision for the future. And if that wasn't bad enough, Marcos steps forward, smiling like this is all perfectly normal, and starts talking about his real estate empire. He said he owned properties all over, expanding into other states, and that he and Elena were building the kind of future I never could. The arrogance, the way he looked down on me, it was like I was invisible, just some small obstacle they'd happily bulldozed over. I couldn't take it. I looked around the room at my friends, my family, my parents standing there completely stunned, and I couldn't stay a second longer. I turned and walked out, feeling like my whole world had shattered. A few people, including my parents, followed me out, but most of them just stayed behind, watching as Elena carried on with her party like nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just torn my life apart in front of everyone I knew. That night, I ended up at my parents' house, barely able to process what had just happened. The humiliation, the betrayal, it was all too much. I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering how the woman I'd married could do something so cruel, so calculated, just to make me feel small. A few days after that nightmare of a birthday party, I couldn't shake off the need to know more about this guy Marcos that Elena was so eager to flaunt. Something about him didn't sit right with me. I couldn't believe she'd bring someone into our lives without me knowing who he was, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't what she thought he was either. I decided to get in touch with Tom, an old friend of mine who's been in the real estate business for years and knows everyone who's anyone in the industry. If Marcos really was some big shot real estate mogul, Tom would know. I gave Tom a call, and after a long pause, he said, "I've never heard of any Marcos who fits that description." He checked with a few contacts, but nothing came up. No one knew a Marcos running a real estate empire or even owning property locally. That was my first red flag, and honestly, it was a big one. I shared this with my lawyer during one of our initial divorce meetings, and she suggested hiring a private investigator. I figured, why not? At this point, I had nothing to lose and a lot of questions piling up. The investigator got to work, and within days, he called me back with some information that completely floored me. Turns out Marcos isn't even his real name. His name is Michael Peterson, and he has a long history of scamming women, particularly successful women in the real estate industry like Elena. He'd been arrested before, did some time in Nevada for investment fraud, and then just vanished under a new identity. His entire real estate empire was a lie, crafted just to target women like Elena who'd fall for his story and hand over their hard-earned money. He was basically a professional con artist with years of practice under his belt. What shocked me even more was how calculated his moves were. He didn't just stumble upon his victims, he carefully selected them. He'd scope out successful women in real estate, study their social media profiles, attend their industry events, and then accidentally bump into them. He'd dress the part, say the right things, and show off fake documents for non-existent projects. And just like that, they'd be hooked. He'd charm them, convince them to invest in these big, impressive-sounding developments, and once they handed over enough cash, he'd vanish. The investigator found at least 5 other women who had been swindled by Marcos, or rather by Michael. One of them had lost her entire retirement savings. Another had to declare bankruptcy. The more I heard, the more I realized how deep this scam went, and how easily Elena had fallen for it. She was convinced he was everything I wasn't, successful, rich, powerful. But it was all a front, just a role he was playing to reel her in. She hadn't checked a thing. She trusted him with no questions asked, just because he showed up with a fancy suit and the right words. I thought about warning her, reaching out somehow to let her know exactly who her new husband was. But every time I thought about it, I just remembered that smirk on her face at my party, the way she humiliated me in front of everyone. She'd made her choice, and now she'd have to live with it. But still, I couldn't help but think about the money she'd already handed over. There was no way he was sticking around to build a future with her. He was just draining her dry. Then one day, I decided to go to her parents. I figured if anyone could talk sense into her, maybe they could. I showed up with all the documents the investigator had pulled up. Old court records, testimonies from other victims, everything. But when I walked through the door and laid it all out for them, her father practically threw me out. He said I was making everything up out of jealousy just because she'd moved on with someone better. Her mother didn't even look at the papers. She just sat there nodding along with everything he said. That was the moment I knew I was done trying. Elena and her parents were so blinded by whatever fantasy she was living with this man that they couldn't even see the truth when it was staring them in the face. If they wanted to believe in a fairy tale, I'd let them. But I knew the truth. and I knew exactly how this would end. And as much as it pained me to watch her fall for such an obvious scam, I couldn't do anything about it now. She'd built this for herself, brick by brick, and soon enough, it was all going to come crashing down. A few weeks after I tried to warn her parents, everything started to unravel, just like I knew it would. Elena's perfect new life with Marcos was crumbling faster than she could have imagined. I got the first hint of it when my lawyer told me that Elena had tried to sell our house. She'd found a buyer and was pushing for a quick sale, even listing it well below market value. Apparently, Marcos had convinced her that they'd triple the money by investing the profits in his big Dubai luxury condo project. She was so blinded by his promises that she didn't even consult her own lawyer before putting the house up for sale. But here's the kicker. Right before the sale was finalized, Marcos disappeared. Just like that. Phone disconnected, email shut down, all social media wiped clean. Elena couldn't reach him anywhere. And then she started noticing other things missing too. She went to check her bank accounts and found them completely drained. Nearly $200,000 gone. Her credit cards were maxed out with bills racked up at luxury stores in different cities. And on top of all that, he'd taken out 3 personal loans in her name, totaling another $150,000 using forged documents. When she finally contacted her real estate agency, they informed her that they discovered checks she'd issued from the company account, supposedly for investment purposes at his urging. Over $50,000 gone from company funds, and now the agency was launching an investigation. They suspended her brokerage license while they dug into the whole mess, and now she was facing potential legal charges on top of her financial disaster. But it didn't end there. Turns out Michael, actually had been digging through Elena's client records. He'd used her access to find wealthy clients and convinced at least 2 of them to invest in his fake Dubai project. By the time they figured out they'd been scammed, the money had already vanished. Her agency was looking at possible lawsuits from these clients, and she was suddenly the face of a scandal that was about to wreck her entire career. Meanwhile, I was keeping a close eye on everything. My lawyer sent her lawyer a letter making it clear that if any of our marital assets went into Marcos's investments, I'd press charges. Then I heard through mutual friends that Elena had been bragging about her big plans with Marcos right up until he vanished. She'd been trying to convince some of her colleagues to invest too. She was so sure that she was on her way to living some glamorous jet-set life with him that she couldn't see what was right in front of her. After Marcos disappeared, I started getting calls from Elena. At first, she left messages asking to talk, sounding almost desperate. Then came the emails. She claimed she'd been tricked and that she was so sorry for what she'd done to me, said she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. But I ignored every message. The same woman who humiliated me in front of everyone I knew was now the one begging me for help. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her, not after everything she put me through. Even her parents tried calling me, asking if I'd help Elena out since technically we were still legally married. Her father sounded almost like a broken man, asking if I could somehow help her dig herself out of this. I reminded him how he'd practically thrown me out of his house when I tried to warn them about Marcos. I wasn't about to lift a finger to fix her mess now. Elena's stuck in a nightmare of her own making. She can't afford rent, can't get back to her career, and her reputation's been shredded by her association with a convicted con artist. Marcos had taken everything she had, left her with debt, and ruined her name in the industry. I'd like to say I didn't see it coming, but honestly, she's reaping what she sowed. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd been trying to keep my head above water, dealing with the fallout she left in her wake, but now she was out of my life for good, left to pick up the pieces on her own. It wasn't my mess to clean up anymore. After everything with Elena and Marcos, I had to start rebuilding my life from scratch. I'd spent months feeling like I'd been run over by a freight train, dealing with the mess she left in the divorce process, dragging on and on. But finally, after what felt like an eternity, the divorce was finalized. The judge ruled in my favor, especially after we brought forward all the evidence of her betrayal, Marcos's criminal history, and how she'd recklessly drained our savings. I kept my pension and what little was left of our assets. It felt like a weight was lifted, like I could finally start breathing again. Once the divorce was behind me, I put everything into moving forward. I went back into the job market with fresh determination, interviewing for roles I never would have considered before. After a few rounds of meetings, I landed a position as a regional sales director at Luxury Living Furniture, one of the biggest furniture chains in the country. Ironically, the recruiter told me that they were impressed by how I'd handled challenging circumstances. Apparently, they'd heard some of what happened with Elena and Marcos, but instead of shaming me, it actually worked in my favor. They saw it as a sign of resilience, and honestly, I think they were right. With a new job, I felt like I had purpose again. The salary was better than what I'd ever made at OC Pine, and it gave me a chance to rebuild my financial stability. I even managed to buy a small house in a quiet neighborhood, something that was just mine. No shared memories, no reminders of Elena, just a fresh start. I started going to the gym regularly, something I hadn't done in years, and I adopted a dog from a local shelter. That dog, Milo, became the best companion I could ask for. Loyal and always there no matter what. Some friends who'd stuck by me through everything told me how glad they were to see me doing well. Even a few mutual friends who'd originally supported Elena tried reaching out, apologizing for how they'd taken her side when everything happened. I didn't hold it against them. People make mistakes. But I knew that my real circle, the ones who'd been there from the beginning, were the ones I could truly rely on. And as for the others, I kept my distance. Life moved on, but every now and then I'd hear bits and pieces about what happened to Elena. Her real estate license remained suspended, and with her credit ruined, she couldn't get back on her feet financially. From what I'd heard, her reputation in the industry was beyond repair, especially after her agency faced a lawsuit from those clients she'd unknowingly exposed to Marcos's scams. She ended up moving back in with her parents, struggling to find work and surrounded by people who no longer saw her as the golden girl of real estate. Not too long ago, her parents tried to reach out to me. They suggested we meet up, that maybe I should give her a second chance, saying she'd learned her lesson and thought deeply about what she'd done. They said she wanted to apologize, to make things right. But I couldn't even entertain the idea. How could I, after the way she humiliated me and tossed me aside for someone who only wanted her money? I reminded them of how she publicly tore me down on my birthday, how she tried to strip away my dignity, and how they backed her up. Some things can't be undone, and I wasn't interested in revisiting any part of that chapter. The strangest part of it all is that after everything, I feel lighter. My life is simple now, and I like it that way. I don't have to worry about someone else's endless ambitions or feel like I'm constantly falling short. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, and honestly, I'm happier than I ever was with her. It's not revenge or bitterness that drives me anymore. It's relief. I'm free from the chaos, from the toxic whirlwind that was our marriage, and knowing that is the best gift I could have given myself.